After I was elected as a bishop in 2008 in Grand Rapids, Michigan, I was assigned to the state of Iowa, the Iowa area, which is the whole state of Iowa for the United Methodist Church. We have churches in all 99 counties. We have at least one congregation in Nebraska and one in Illinois as well. We have over 780 congregations, about 180,000 persons. But we work with a much larger community than that. I spend a significant amount of time in my 6 years in Iowa working with persons ecumenically in their faith, relative to reduction of gun violence, to comprehensive immigration reform, to issues of poverty, and to issues of welcoming the stranger to Iowa. My remarks will be relatively brief for two reasons. The longer preachers preach, including bishops, the less people remember what you say. The second reason is that what I have to say is under three succinct themes. Number one, thank you. Number two, to encourage you. And yes, I mean all of you. And three, to invite you. First, a thank you to those public servants, those who are public service citizens, elected representatives in the state of Iowa. And if you have an opportunity to meet with your elected representative today, or to some of the representatives and state senators, I would encourage you to thank them first before you say anything else. I'm a former community organizer, and one of the things I learned in our training was to affirm people for their witness wherever they are, and then we can engage on those things that we deem to be most important to ourselves, most important to those whom we represent. I thank you for your service as well. Politics too often, I think incorrectly, has been defined simply as a matter of party affiliation: Democrat, Republican, Tea Party, Chocolate Party, whatever other kind of party you come. But I think that's an incorrect way of looking at it. And too often we define politics from the standpoint of constituents in a particular region or a particular district. What I did earlier today was to thank those persons who have been elected, and they made a pledge to support the Constitution of the United States of America and the Constitution of the state of Iowa. And often, friends, we have to remember that our Constitution is our friend. And if we can ask people to uphold those things that are embedded in our constitutions, we have pretty good leeway to advocate for most of the things that we deem are important. You made a pledge and a vow to discharge your duties to the best of your abilities. And so as leader of one of the largest Protestant denominations in the country and in the state of Iowa, I say thank you for your service to our state. Now, those who are United Methodists in Iowa should know my mission statement, but it's important for me to repeat it periodically. It is to encourage all people with the love of Jesus Christ to rise to their highest potential. Yes, my ministry, my primary ministry, is a ministry of encouragement. My presence today is not to ask for favor or to promote a particular bill that may come before the House or the Senate. My presence today is to say to you that a healthy society and a thriving state in Iowa will be characterized by citizens who are involved, who are educated, and who are empowered. On any given Sunday, 58,000 United Methodists gather to worship in churches all over this state. Like many of our neighbors, we are impacted by decisions made by our elected representatives whose charge is to promote the well-being of the whole state and the quality of life for all who call Iowa home. I am motivated to encourage all people because the mandate to share the blessings of the gospel of Jesus Christ. My leadership style embraces that of long-standing Representative Drake, who was here earlier, a legislator whose consistent leadership is characterized by what he calls common sense with vision. I encourage you, not just those persons who have been elected to served in public office, but all of us, to embrace common sense solutions, to recommend common sense solutions, as well as innovation that's born out of hard work. I encourage you, those of you who are here for training, and those of you who will be advocating with our state legislature, I encourage you to trust God and to embrace a spirit of collaboration. The Gospel of John, the 13th chapter, 34 and 35. A new command I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another. The third thing I want to conclude by inviting you to be influenced by your faith. Your faith in God, your faith in the goodness of humanity. Begin each day with prayer. Pray first, reflect and think second, and then act third. The United Methodist Church is a church whose membership extends beyond the United States boundaries. This year in 2015, we celebrate 25 years of partnership with United Methodist in Nigeria. This is just one example of our denomination being a church that extends beyond U.S. borders. Iowa United Methodist, not just United Methodist, but in partnership with many others, responded to the floods and tornadoes that have impacted Iowa since 2008, and to disasters all over this country, as well as missionary work in over 100 countries. But we are also driven not just by a commitment to love our neighbor and a commitment to be in mission locally and abroad. We are driven, and I want you to hear this, United Methodists and those who are not, we are driven in part by our social principles. Just to give you a little taste of that. Our allegiance to God takes precedence over our allegiance to any state. But we acknowledge the vital function of government as a principal vehicle for ordering society. That's from our 2012 Book of Discipline, The Social Principles, paragraph 164. Our social principles are statements that say that we care. We care about certain things so much that we're willing to do something about them. We care about creation. All creation is the Lord's, and we are responsible for the ways in which we use and abuse it. God has granted us stewardship of creation. For example, we support measures designed to maintain and restore natural ecosystems. We support the call for reduction of greenhouse gases, protection of animal life, and food safety. That's just a sample of what our social principles say. We're concerned about the nurturing community. The United Methodist Church maintains that the social climate should be one that fosters personal growth of individuals. This applies to all people, not because of any particular characteristic or status, but because each individual is created in the image of God. The social community. We support equal rights for all individuals. This includes all adults, children, young people, regardless of race, religious affiliation, ethnicity, sexual orientation, disability, or economic status. We care about the economic community. We oppose gambling and games of chance. At the same time, we affirm economic self-determination. We support a living wage and oppose exploitation of workers, including wage theft. The political community. While our first responsibility is to God, we affirm responsible citizenship and full participation in a democratic political process, and recognize that government has a vital role in ordering society. 3 areas that could intersect with state legislation and leadership includes things that you may also be having conversation. These are just 3 examples. There are more than just 3 areas, but I picked these 3 just to highlight today. the use of marijuana for medical purposes. Now I'm going to read to you just a brief excerpt from the 2012 Book of Resolutions of the United Methodist Church. Some studies indicate circumstances in which marijuana can have an important palliative medicinal effect, unavailable through other means. The medical use of any drug, however, should not be seen as encouraging recreational use of it. We urge all persons to abstain from all use of marijuana unless it has been legally prescribed in a form appropriate for treating a particular medical condition. This is an example of an expression of a faith community about a particular issue that is played out in local state governments and federal legislation as well. The call for comprehensive immigration reform. This is an excerpt from the Book of Resolutions, Resolution 5081, from the 2012 Book of Resolutions. When a foreigner resides among you in your land, do not mistreat them. The foreigner residing among you must be treated as your native born. Love them. Love them. Love them as yourself, for you were foreigners in Egypt. I am the Lord your God. That's from Leviticus, the 19th chapter, from the New International Version, verses 33 and 34. Support immigration reform that unifies families, provides pathway to citizenship. We assert that immigrant children deserve to be educated and provided with basic social services. Our 2008 General Conference for the United Methodist Church requested the Council of Bishops, which I'm a member, to urgently establish a plan of advocacy and welcoming the sojourner to allow conferences and states, that would be, for example, the Iowa Annual Conference and the state of Iowa, to respond to challenges and needs of immigrant populations in our communities. So it is consistent with who we say we are and who we want to be when we speak of being a welcoming state and a welcoming community. Education and funding. This is an excerpt from Resolution 5051 from the Book of Resolutions. Education is a right of all children and is affirmed by Scripture, which calls us to train children in the way they should go, Proverbs 22, verse 6. We are called to advocate at state and local levels for adequate public school funding and equitable distribution of state funds and support efforts to end unjust educational disparities between rich and poor communities. I learned this last night with some friends from the Aldersgate Urbandale Church over at Drake University. 40% of Iowa children are in early childhood education programs. Everybody say amen. That's a good thing. Let's make it 80%. Because every dollar invested in early childhood, we get $7 in return. Not only that, for every child that's exposed and has the privilege and opportunity to be engaged in early childhood education, the likelihood of success, of rising above whatever the constraints that would contribute to the likelihood of poverty are overcome in most cases. Investing in the well-being of Iowa children through expansion of programs like First 5 Iowa and other literacy programs reduces long-term poverty and increases long-term economic and educational success. The things that we can do, friends, that make common sense and are within our ability, we should do them now. We should ask our legislators to support those things that can be done now, that make common sense, that are within our ability to do them. We should not hesitate and wait for them to happen. If time permitted, I would welcome continued discussion on Iowa, the living wage, minimum wage debates. I'm in favor of providing avenues for more people to earn a living wage and for immediate increase of the minimum wage in Iowa. Not in my notes, but I have a personal passion around the issue of mental health and our increased participation, particularly in the faith community, around issues of mental health. I see that in the opportunities when I've had an opportunity to go to our jails and our prisons. We see the correlation between those persons who don't have access to appropriate mental health services or addiction recovery services who end up in our jails and our prisons. And I'm sure someone will speak to that has more experience and expertise in that area. But I think we have a great opportunity to witness both with those who have been elected to serve the state government, but also then to come back and say, what are things we can do that don't necessarily have to wait for a new law being passed. So thank you for your presence, for your witness, for your commitment to the common good. I want to say that what you do really does matter. And sometimes it matters far more than we understand how it matters. And I had the opportunity to be in conversation with several good people today who just affirmed, for example, that our investment in early childhood education and literacy literally can save lives and make a difference in our lifetime. Thank you very much. God bless you very much.